the Battle of Champaran is won. Not just a victory over the British landlords, but a triumph of truth, dignity, and Gandhian courage. Hey there, curious minds. Welcome back to the Eloquent Explorers, where English isn't just read, it's relived. Today's journey takes us into the fields of Champaran with none other than Mahatma Gandhi himself in Indigo by Louis Fischer, a real story of leadership, justice, and a turning point in India's freedom movement. Whether you're gearing up for your Class 12 board exam or aiming for PGT English for KVS, AWES, etc., this chapter is pure gold. Here is what we will unlock today. We will just begin by discussing about the author. Next, we will get to know the setting and the time period. Setting is the place and the time period. Then, I will give you a brief introduction and the background to this incident. We will then discuss this chapter in detail. It is a long chapter, so please stay till the end. I know it can get a little heavy at times, but I have tried my best to explain it to you in great detail and in the simplest way possible. Then we are going to take a quick recap to highlight to understand the main events that have taken place in this incident. After that, we are going to discuss the literary aspects of this chapter, which include the themes such as non-violence, resilience, self-reliance, etc. Tone, mood and style, literary devices, main characters, and the message that this incident and this chapter conveys. Let's walk barefoot through history, where even indigo plants had a role in sowing the seeds of revolution. Our author, Louis Fischer, was born in Philadelphia, USA. He volunteered in the British Army from 1918 to 1920 after World War I and became a renowned journalist and political commentator. He wrote for major publications such as the New York Times, the Saturday Review, and various European journals. Later, he joined the faculty at Princeton University as an international affairs expert. Widely respected for his coverage of global politics, social justice, and freedom movements, he has authored several books, most notably of which is The Life of Mahatma Gandhi. Our chapter Indigo is an excerpt from this very book. You can see the book here. The book has been reviewed as one of the best books ever written on Gandhi by Times Educational Supplement. His writing reflects deep empathy, clarity, and insight into Gandhian values like truth, non-violence, and civil disobedience. Contributed to popularizing Gandhiji's philosophy globally, which made him a key interpreter of Indian nationalism for Western audience. So this book, The Life of Mahatma Gandhi, is the book written by Louis Fischer, from which we will be studying a small portion which has been titled as Indigo. The important points to remember is that the name of the book is The Life of Mahatma Gandhi, and the writer is Louis Fischer, and the chapter Indigo is a short excerpt of this very book. So that was about our author. The setting we all know is the place called Champaran, which is located in Bihar in India. I will urge all of you students to open your atlases or at least your Google Maps and check where Champaran is. It was rural colonized India under British rule. The time period that we are going to study in this story is of 1917, which was during the British Raj, where colonization had established and British rule had taken deep roots into our country and they were ruling our people. So it is that time period before our independence. Before we dive deep into this chapter, let's take a quick look at the background. To truly understand Indigo, we need to go back more than a century to a small district in Bihar called Champaran in the year 1970. India was still under British rule. Farmers were struggling, and one crop sat at the heart of the struggle: indigo. Indigo was a deep blue dye made from a plant. It was in high demand in Europe, especially for dyeing clothes. But the way it was cultivated in India was deeply unjust. Under the British system, poor Indian farmers, mostly illiterate and landless, were forced to grow indigo on a portion of their land under a system called the Tinkatia system. This meant that out of every 20 parts of the land, 3 parts had to be used for growing indigo, whether the farmers liked it or not. They weren't paid fairly. They couldn't refuse. And if the indigo crop failed, the burden was still on them. The chapter Indigo tells the story of how Mahatma Gandhi, for the first time, stepped into such a local issue, not just to protest, but to deeply investigate and help solve it. It wasn't a mass movement. There were no grand speeches, but it was a moment of awakening for Gandhi, for the peasants, and for India's freedom struggle. This is where Indigo begins, not just as a story about farming, but as a story about courage, justice, and the birth of Satyagraha in India. I urge you all to keep your textbooks open now and keep pencils in your hands so that you can underline the difficult words, note down their meanings as we go, and highlight or note down any important point as we go through the chapter Indigo, written by Louis Fischer. When I first visited Gandhi in 1942 at his ashram in Sevagram in central India, he said, I will tell you how it happened that I decided to urge the departure of the British. It was in 1970. So the chapter begins with first person pronoun. This is our author, Louis Fischer. He's written it as a biography, so it's in the form of a recollection. Okay, in the form of a recollection of the incidents that happened. Okay, so this is about during the year 1942, when our author had visited our Mahatma Gandhi in Sevagram at his ashram, and that's where, upon asking, Mahatma Gandhi uh, told him the story of how he started the departure of British. The story starts and takes place in 1917. This incident has taken place in 1917 in a place called Champaran in Bihar. He had gone. Now, he refers to Mahatma Gandhi in third person because it's a biography, and Louis Fischer is um, using the first personal pronoun for himself. Therefore Mahatma Gandhi and other people have been referred to as third person. All right. So he had gone to the December 1916 annual convention of the Indian National Congress Party in Lucknow. There were 2,301 delegates and many visitors. During the proceedings, Gandhi recounted, a peasant came to me looking like any other peasant in India, poor and emaciated, and said, I am Rajkumar Shukla. This is a very important name, and this chapter entirely revolves around him and how he urged and convinced Mahatma Gandhi to help him free his fellow peasants, his fellow villagers from this very unfair Tinkatia system. Okay, I am from Champaran and I want you to come to my district. Gandhi had never heard of the place. It was in the foothills of the towering Himalayas near the kingdom of Nepal. Okay, delegates are people who have been chosen to speak or take decisions for a group of people. Okay, representatives, you can say in simple terms. Emaciated, that means extremely thin and weak because of illness or lack of food. So, this word emaciated tells us the condition of the farmers during you can say before independence, and also very close to independence. Okay, so emaciated is someone who's very thin, who's grown very thin because they do not get proper food and because of illness. Okay, now, Louis Fischer tells us in this paragraph that it was, now he's recollecting this incident, okay, that in 1916, Mahatma Gandhi had gone in December to attend this convention, this meeting of the Indian National Congress Party, which was held in Lucknow. There were 2,301 delegates or representatives, and there were a lot of visitors that were witnessing this meeting, this convention. During the proceedings, Gandhi recounted. Now, Gandhi is telling Louis Fisher this incident. Okay, he's narrating this incident, how it happened, and while narrating, he recalls what had happened. He tells him that a peasant had come up to him looking like any other peasant in India. Okay, peasant is a farmer. All right. So, a farmer, comes up to Mahatma Gandhi during the convention in 1916 December and he talks to him, tells him that he is Rajkumar Shukla and he is from Champaran. From the looks of this man, Gandhi could tell that he was like any other farmer in that country during those times, because he was poor. He could see that he was poor and emaciated. He was very thin. Now, Rajkumar Shukla requests Mahatma Gandhi to come to his district, which is Champaran. Now, Gandhi tells Fisher that he had never heard of the place Champaran. He tells him that it is situated in the foothills of the towering Himalayas near the kingdom of Nepal. Okay, so it is, you can say, it's close to the Bihar and Nepal border. All right, I hope this much is clear. I know since this chapter is closely related to history, it may not be very appealing for a lot of students, and I can relate to all of you students because, yes, history is one chapter, one, you can say, aspect or subject that somehow makes us feel not so interested in it. Okay, but let me tell you that it is a very important part of our lives. How, and it not only tells us what has happened, it tells us what we are supposed to do and what we're not supposed to do. We can learn from the mistakes and the good decisions of the people who have come before us. Hence the importance. And yes, I know it is relatively boring, but I will try my best to keep it as interesting as possible for you people. So stay with me throughout this chapter because it will tell you how Mahatma Gandhi, not just Mahatma Gandhi, how people started understanding the ideologies of Mahatma Gandhi and how this whole process of independence actually started from non-violence. It changed its ways from violence and from wars to non-violence, and how that helped us, along with other things, how that helped us reach where we are today. Okay, so just stick through it. We'll do it together. Under an ancient arrangement, the Champaran peasants were sharecroppers. Okay, sharecroppers, I will explain. Rajkumar Shukla was one of them. He was illiterate but resolute. He had come to the Congress session to complain about the injustice of the landlord system in Bihar. Somebody had probably said, "Speak to Gandhi." Okay, so this although in this picture he looks like a good, healthy farmer, but imagine him half of this size. Okay, because he was not um getting enough food and he was very poor. Okay, and he was illiterate. Okay, now this we get to know that under this there was this ancient arrangement that we talked about, the system, in which if you have a land and you divide it into 20 parts. Okay, let's try dividing. Okay, so long just something like this. All right, and let's try again. Okay, so if you have a land, you have to divide it into 20 parts. Okay, and so on, and then you have to use those three parts of that land for indigo farming. Okay, one, two, and let's say three. Now, three parts of the land have been taken away for indigo farming. This was our Tinkatia system. All right. So it is 3 out of 20. 3 parts out of 20 was this system. Now, if you have a huge land, well and good, you can plant, you can use 3 parts of it. Okay, won't make much of a difference. But for small farmers, for people who had very small lands, not adequate lands to cultivate food enough for themselves, this system was very troublesome for them. Okay, and this system, under this system, these people were called sharecroppers because they had to share their land, their crops, with the uh, authorities, the British Raj, okay, and the landlords, of course. Rajkumar Shukla was one of such uh, farmer who was stuck in this vicious cycle of sharecropping and who had to willingly or unwillingly give this 3 parts out of 20 parts of his land to indigo, to cultivate indigo. Okay, now he was very frustrated from the system and he was very resolute. He was very determined to come to get to the end of this system, to abolish this system. All right. So what he does is that he comes to this Congress session, this convention that we talked about, and here he wanted to complain about the injustice of this landlord system that was taking place in Bihar. And somebody over there had probably suggested him to talk to Gandhi. Okay. Gandhi told Shukla that he had an appointment in Kanpur and was also committed to go to other parts of India. Shukla accompanied him everywhere. Now you can see how resolute he was, how determined he was, that he kept going wherever Mahatma Gandhi went, he followed him there. Okay. Then Gandhi returned to his ashram near Ahmedabad. Shukla followed him to the ashram. For weeks, he never left Gandhi's side. Fix a date, he begged. Impressed by the sharecropper's tenacity and story, Gandhi said, I have to be in Calcutta on such and such a date. Come and meet me and take me from there. Now, finally, Mahatma Gandhi gave up because he saw the determination of this farmer. He was so adamant at taking Gandhiji with him that he was impressed by his tenacity, by his determination. Okay, he did not give up, and for weeks he kept following Mahatma Gandhi wherever he went. And because of this, Mahatma Gandhi was impressed, and finally he agreed. He gave in, and he told him that he had to visit Calcutta on a particular date that had been set. He tells Rajkumar Shukla and asks him to come to meet him there and to take him to Champaran because Gandhi had never been to Champaran. So he tells him that he can come to Calcutta on this date and he can take him to his village. Months passed. Shukla was sitting on his haunches at the appointed spot in Calcutta when Gandhi arrived. He waited till Gandhi was free. Then the two of them boarded a train for the city of Patna in Bihar. There, Shukla led him to the house of a lawyer named Rajendra Prasad, who later became the president of Congress party. and of India. Rajendra Prasad was out of town, but the servants knew Shukla as a poor yeoman who pestered their master to help the indigo sharecroppers. So they let him stay on the grounds with his companion, Gandhi, whom they took to be another peasant. But Gandhi was not permitted to draw water from the well, lest some drops from his bucket pollute the entire source. How did they know that he was not an untouchable? Okay, now uh, months passed, and when the time came, Shukla was already waiting for Gandhi sitting on his haunches. Haunches are this part. You know, when the behind of your leg touches the bottom, that is called your haunches. A person's bottom and the top of his legs, his or her legs are touching. That is their your haunches. All right. So he was sitting in this position, and he was waiting for Gandhi on that appointed date and place where he was supposed to meet him. And he very patiently waited for Gandhi to finish. Now, once he was finished, from there, from Calcutta, they took a train to Patna. Okay, remember, from Calcutta, on whichever date, the date is not mentioned, so we cannot know which date. So, on whatever date Gandhi had given him, on that date, they boarded from Calcutta to Patna. Okay, Calcutta, West Bengal, Patna, Bihar. All right. Now, from there, when they reached Patna, they reached Shukla, Rajkumar Shukla. He took Mahatma Gandhi to Rajendra Prasad's house, Dr. Rajendra Prasad's house. Okay. Now, at that time, Dr. Rajendra Prasad was not the president. Okay, he was a lawyer. At that time, he was only a lawyer, and that too, he was not at his home at that time. Okay, so Shukla takes him there, and the people over there, the servants, they already knew that Shukla was a poor yeoman, a farmer who owned the land on which he worked. Okay, so during those times, this is the British term, that a yeoman is a person who owned the land they work at. Okay, so they work on. Now there are different kinds of farmers, farmers that own their land and farmers that don't own their land. Okay, so some farmers, they own their land and they work on it, and other farmers work on some landowners field. Okay, they work for other people, and in turn, and in they get wages, or they get food, they get crops in return. All right, so this one was a yeoman. Okay, i I don't know if he looked like this at all, but just let's take him as a peasant, as the peasant. Okay, just try to visualize every thing we are reading. Okay, try to visualize a person, a very thin poor farmer, taking Mahatma Gandhi along to Dr. Rajendra Prasad's house. Okay, where now the servants mistook Mahatma Gandhi. They were probably not aware of him, so they mistook him as another peasant, as another farmer. And they allowed Shukla, because they already knew that this person kept coming to Dr. Rajendra Prasad, kept asking him to work for the sharecroppers, to help the indigo sharecroppers. And he kept annoying, he kept pestering Dr. Rajendra Prasad. So they knew Shukla very well, and they thought Mahatma Gandhi was another companion. Okay, but remember, but see this here. What we get to know is that they did not let Mahatma Gandhi to drink water from the well, to draw water from the well, because they thought he was another touchable. Okay, they were not aware that that he wasn't. And this also tells us about how this untouchability was still existent in the at that time. Okay, so they did not even allow Mahatma Gandhi to draw water from the well, thinking that if even if a few drops fell from his bucket, it would pollute, it would dirty the entire well. Okay, so they did not know. This line means that this line, how did they know that he was not an untouchable? This means, this is telling us, this is a sarcastic way of telling us that they did not know that Mahatma Gandhi was not an untouchable. Okay, and also this is such a horrible. This was such a horrible practice that was going on at that time. All right. So I hope this much is clear. Gandhi decided to go first to Muzaffarpur, which was en route to Champaran, to obtain more complete information about the conditions than Shukla was capable of imparting. He accordingly sent a telegram to Professor J.B. Kriplani of the Arts College in Muzaffarpur, whom he had seen at Tagore's Shantiniketan school. The train arrived at midnight, 15th April 1917. Kriplani was waiting at the station with a large body of students. Gandhi stayed there for 2 days in the home of Professor Malkani, a teacher in government school. It was an extraordinary thing in those days, Gandhi commented, for a government professor to harbor a man like me. In small localities, the Indians were afraid to show sympathy for advocates of home rule. Now, before moving to Champaran, uh, Gandhi decides to go to Muzaffarpur. Okay, that is the place which is on the way to Champaran, and he goes there so that he can understand, he can get more information about the situation of these indigo sharecroppers more than what Shukla was capable to give. Okay, Shukla was not capable to give him enough information. So he decides to go to Muzaffarnagar to obtain more and complete information. All right. Now, there, for that, he also sends a telegram to Professor J.B. Kriplani. He was the professor at Arts College in Muzaffarpur, and he had seen him at Tagore's Shantiniketan school as well. All right. Now, the train arrived at midnight on 15th of April, and he saw that Kriplani was waiting for him at the station. Okay, now here Mahatma Gandhi gets a very grand welcome. Okay, uh, Professor Kriplani was waiting with a large body of students, with a lot of students. He was waiting at midnight. He was waiting for Mahatma Gandhi to come so that every one of them could meet him. Okay, now and also to welcome him, to give him the due respect. All right. Gandhi stayed there for 2 days in the home of Professor Malkani. Now, he does not stay at the place where J.B. Kriplani was staying. He stays at a different professor's house, which is Professor Malkani. He was also a teacher in a government school. And Gandhi comments that it was an extraordinary thing at that time that people would, because ordinary people or people working for the government would never harbor, would never give, hide, protect, or give shelter to people who were actually advocating, who were, um, you know, you can say, who were supporting the Indian Home Rule movement, that who were in support of making the British leave the country and making India a free country, a sovereign country. Okay, who wanted self governance and who wanted dominion status for India. All right. So those were the advocates of home rule. Or they wanted dominion status within the British Empire at that time. They wanted to govern themselves. So they were advocates. They were people who were supporting the home rule, the Indian home rule. And government professors and government officials and even other Indians were very afraid to show sympathy. So they were basically like protesters. Okay, they were revolutionaries for them. And they saw it as a crime. And they were really, the British, of course, saw it as a crime. And uh, the local people and the government officials were scared to hide these people, to support these people in open, because they thought that if the British came to know, if the government came to know, they would come into trouble. Okay, so to avoid their trouble, to avoid this going against the current government at that time, they were very scared. Local people were very scared to harbor people like Gandhi. However, in even in such circumstance, there were a few people who were brave enough. Okay, so Professor Malkani was such a person who was brave enough to give shelter to people like Mahatma Gandhi. to Mahatma Gandhi at that time. Okay, I hope this much is clear. Now, the news of Gandhi's advent and of the nature of his mission spread quickly through Muzaffarpur and to Champaran. Sharecroppers from Champaran began arriving on foot and by conveyance to see their champion. Muzaffarpur lawyers called on Gandhi to brief him. They frequently represented peasant groups in court. They told him about their cases and reported the size of their fee. Very important point we will discuss here, the fee that the lawyers were taking from these very poor farmers. Okay. Now, the news that Gandhi had arrived, it spread like wildfire through Muzaffarpur very quickly, through Muzaffarpur and even to Champaran. All right. Now, sharecroppers from Champaran, they started coming to meet Gandhi because they had hopes in their hearts, and they finally thought that their champion had arrived. The person who could free them from this injustice had finally arrived. So they hurried to meet him. They wanted to meet him. They wanted to share their plight, their problems with him. Okay. So, however they could, by foot, by any conveyance, however they could, people started gathering in Muzaffarpur around Mahatma Gandhi. Okay. Now, the lawyers in Muzaffarpur, they started calling on Gandhi. They started meeting Gandhi to tell him, to brief him about the cases that were going on in the courts, to tell him about how frequently they represented these poor farmers, and they told him about the fees. The first thing that Gandhi told these lawyers off, he blamed them, he criticized them, he scolded them, was for collecting a big fee from sharecroppers. These people were already very poor, okay? And now these lawyers were also taking fees to represent them in courts, okay? They were already suffering. This did not please Gandhi, okay? So he scolded, he criticized these lawyers for taking such huge amounts of fee to represent their cases, to put forth their cases in the court. He said, now he is Mahatma Gandhi, he said, I have come to the conclusion that we should stop going to law courts. Taking such cases to the courts does little good. Where the peasants are so crushed and fear stricken, law courts are useless. The real relief for them is to be free from fear. Okay. So now Mahatma Gandhi decides, he tells the lawyers that there is no point in going to the courts. Okay. These farmers are already very scared, they're already very poor, and the laws are already against them. They are not in favor of the natives. They're not in favor of these farmers, of these peasants. So there is no point in wasting all this money and effort and time going to these law courts. Okay. Instead, it is time that they should be free from this fear. They should stop being afraid and harassed. They should stop being afraid of the British government, and they should stop being harassed by this very government. And for that, he says that they need to stop going to the law courts. And in the Champaran district was divided into large estates owned by Englishmen and worked by Indian tenants. The chief commercial crop was indigo. The landlords compelled all tenants to plant 3/20ths or 15% of their holdings with indigo and surrender the entire indigo harvest as rent. This was done by long-term contract. Sorry, just a second. Okay, so this is the explanation of that Tinkatia system that we were talking about, that most of the arable land is the fertile land that is used for the farming. Okay, so the arable, most part of the arable land was divided into large estates. Large landowners used to own those lands, and and they were owned by Englishmen. Okay, the landlords were Englishmen. And on those lands, those huge lands, um, the tenants, the people who worked on those lands, who actually did the groundwork, the farmers were Indians. Okay. Now, the chief commercial crop that they had to grow was indigo. Now, whatever land pieces all these tenants got, what happened was that, let's say this is a huge piece of land. Okay. Now, this land is owned by some Englishman. All right. Some Englishman is the landowner. All right. Now, this land was probably divided into parts. Okay, let's say one here, one here, one here. All right. And give to various tenants. This was given to various tenants. Tenants are people who live on rent. All right. This another tenant, and then another tenant somewhere here. Okay. And maybe, and further, there was, let's say, more division. So here, another tenant. Okay. So the whole estate was divided into multiple tenants, was divided and given to multiple tenants, but it was not given to them. They used to work on those lands, and whatever land portion they got, let's say they got, let's say, let's highlight it. Okay. Oh, the pen is quite large. Okay, so here. All right. So let's say this tenant got this portion of land. Okay. Now, in this portion of land, let's draw it over here. Now, on this portion of land, this tenant had to divide, let's say 15% of this land. Okay, let's say it comes to this much, or 3 parts out of 20 parts. Okay, 3/20ths. That comes out to be around 15%. Okay, so this part, this tenant had to use to give to grow indigo. Okay, there used to be indigo farming on this part. Now, whatever crops were grown here, all the indigo plants that were grown here, they were supposed to be given to the Englishmen as rent. Okay, so they had to get the seeds on their own, whatever they had to use whatever fertilizers or water and what everything that they had to use, they had to get it on their own, and then they had to give it to the entire crop was given as rent. Okay. Now you must be thinking, what is the benefit of all this? Okay. How were, I mean, it's a small portion of land, and how were the farmers being affected by that so much? Okay. Now let me tell you, indigo at that time was very important crop. It's a commercial crop. Okay. Commercial crop is something that is used for commercial purposes only to sell, in the markets. Okay, it's not, there are different types of crops. They're like food crops and commercial crops. So food crops are the ones that we eat, like wheat and rice and pulses and all that. And commercial crops include crops like indigo, like cotton. Okay, those are not edible, you cannot eat them. They are sown on the land for sale, to maybe make something else. Okay, as to be used as a raw material to make something, some other good or product. All right. Now, this 15% of this land that they were using to grow indigo, indigo at that time, as I told you, was very cost. They used to sell it at a very high price in London because it was very in high in demand over there. Okay, and so here they got cheap labor. Okay, they did not have to pay anything for this labor. They were giving spaces to these people to stay on and work on. And for rent, they used to take indigo. They used to buy indigo at very low prices, very cheap prices. And then they used to sell it in London, in England, at very high prices. Okay, so all the profit they kept for themselves, and these workers, these farmers, they did not even get a fair share of their hard work. Moreover, this cultivation of indigo was also bad for the land because it gradually destroyed the fertility of the land. Okay, so that is why this whole issue arose that indigo being planted, and these croppers, these sharecroppers were being exploited in such a this way that they were not even given their fair amount. Okay, now, so this was all a complete businessman tactic. Okay, So I hope now you understand what is the main issue. Why are these people so agitated? Why are they so uh, worried, and why are they so tired and poor? Okay, they got very less land. It was, so if you give 15% of that land, it was barely enough for them to grow any other crop, to sell it and to survive. All right, because of course you need money for everything else. So that was the problem. Now this whole thing was done through a long term contract. Like, for generations this contract was going on, that tenants generation after generation would stay on that land, and they would work on that land, and their children would work on that land, and they still had, and they continued to grow indigo on the 15% of their land, and they continued selling it, giving it to the landowners. So they got it for free. Landowners got it free of cost. Okay, and then they sold it. So it was a complete profit. They did not give even a single rupee to them. Okay. Now, presently, the landlords learned that Germany had developed synthetic indigo. Now, synthetic is the artificial indigo. Okay. Currently their business is totally dependent on the natural indigo, the flowers that they sow, and these farmers harvest and that they sell. All right. Now, at that time, Germany had developed synthetic indigo. Okay. They thereupon obtained agreements from the sharecroppers to pay them compensation for being released from the 15% arrangement. Now, first, they did not even pay them for growing crops for them. Okay. Secondly, now because they wanted an out, they did not want to continue this contract anymore. Now, they were actually asking these sharecroppers, these tenants, to pay them the fine of for being released from this agreement, for stop having to grow indigo on their lands. Now this was another blow on them, right? Because they were not being paid enough anyway. They did not have their own lands. They could not they could barely earn to survive, and on top of that they had to give money, more money, to be out, to get out of an arrangement that was totally favorable for Britishers. Okay, so as long as it was favorable for them, they were working, and now that it was, the time was turning, and this, they were not, the Britishers were not in earning as they used to. Now they were putting it on the farmers. They were blaming, they were trying to earn money. They were trying to, extort money from these farmers. They were trying to take more money from these farmers, these poor farmers. All right. Now the sharecropping arrangement was irksome. It was already annoying and irritating to the peasants, and many signed willingly. Okay, there were many peasants who signed willingly, that they wanted an out from this. They were so exhausted of growing indigo, they wanted an out. They did not, they were illiterate. Okay, they did not even care. They just thought that this was an opportunity for them to be freed from this indigo cropping. So many of them signed willingly, and they got out of this arrangement. Now there were those who resisted, engaged lawyers. The landlords hired thugs. See, they engaged lawyers. They wanted lawyers, and they wanted the contract to end properly. Okay. But these landlords, they hired thugs. They hired men who would go around killing and threatening these people. Okay. Meanwhile, the information about synthetic indigo reached the illiterate peasants who had signed, and they wanted their money back. Okay. Now, the peasants, probably some literate ones, or maybe some ones who got higher share of land, bigger lands, and they were able to make money for themselves. So people, they were kind of maybe are at a better situation. So they now got to know about synthetic indigo. Okay. And that's where they realized that they were being cheated. All right. They were being cheated on. And now they wanted their money back, because now they realized that it was not their fault. The agreement was being actually broken by the British. Okay. They were the ones who were breaking the agreement. They were the ones who were breaking the contract. And yet they were taking money from the farmers who were already suffering. Okay. Now, do you understand the whole picture? So they also wanted their money back now. At this point, this is what is going on at that time in 1917, 1916, 17, when Rajkumar Shukla had asked Gandhi to come in there and help him out. So this was the whole situation. This is the whole story that was going on at that time, that peasants were being forced to grow indigo first. Okay, it was a very long term contract, and that kept renewing, that kept going on generation after generation. And in this contract, they had to give 15% of their lands to grow indigo, and the entire crop would go to the Britishers for free. Okay, it was considered as their rent to use the land. I hope that much is clear. Now, after that, what happens is that around 1917, Germany creates the synthetic dye. Okay, so you do not need the flowers anymore. It could be made in factories and it could be supplied, and of course, that was cheaper. Okay, there was not much labor cost, and because it was being manufactured in factories and synthetic uh, chemicals and all were used, so it was way cheaper than these natural dyes. Okay, and of course it must have more durability. Okay, so now Britishers, they wanted an out from this agreement. They wanted to leave this agreement. They wanted to break the contract, but they were not ready to take that blame. So thinking that that all these peasants were illiterate, they gave them an offer to stop to break the contract by paying a certain amount of fee. Okay, now some who were very willing, who were very tired, they willingly signed those contracts. They broke those contracts and signed the agreement. Okay, without getting to know anything, without understanding the situation. They just signed and they just gave the money and they just thought that they were benefiting from it. However, some of the people, they did not. Okay, they hired lawyers. They wanted lawyers to look into it, and they wanted a proper end to this agreement. They wanted proper end to the contract. Okay, because they were not willing to pay any money. Okay. Now what happens is that during this time, this news reaches everybody's ears that synthetic dye has been created. And now they finally understand the actual situation, which was that the Britishers, they wanted to end the contract, but they were showing uh, as if they were giving an opportunity to the Indian peasants to break free from that contract. All right. So now the ones who had given their money willingly, they also now wanted their money back, because now they had finally understood that they had also been cheated on, and they were fooled. Okay, they were fooled. They did not know what was happening. Now this is the point. This is the whole situation when Gandhiji arrives in Champaran. He began by trying to get the facts. First, he visited the secretary of the British Landlords Association. The secretary told him that they could give no information to an outsider. Gandhi answered that he was no outsider. Next, Gandhi called on the British official commissioner of the Trihut division in which the Champaran district lay. The commissioner, Gandhi reports, proceeded to bully me and advise me forthwith to leave Trihut. Okay, now what happens is that when Gandhi ji arrived in Champaran, he first started collecting facts. He first started understanding the actual situation, what is going on, how much money has been taken by wrong means, and exactly what the situation is. Okay, so he tried to go to the offices, to go to British Landlords Association. He visited the secretary over there, the leader of that Landlords Association of British, and he asked for information as to what was going on. He probably wanted to read the contracts, he wanted to check the agreements and other papers. All right, but he was of course not given anything, because Britishers already knew that they were in the wrong. Okay, they were already cheating these people. They were already fooling these illiterate people. Okay, the peasants. And if Gandhiji came to read the contracts, he would come to know that the exact situation is not what people know. Okay, so therefore, saying that he was an outsider, he was not part of the British Landlords Association, he was denied of the information. He did not get any information. So coming back from there, he Gandhi he called on the British official commissioner. He went to the British official commissioner of the Trihut division. Trihut division is the division under which Champaran district lay. Okay, so there he goes to visit the British official commissioner to request for information. However, Gandhi tells Louis Fischer that this person, this commissioner, bullied Gandhi and immediately asked him to leave Trihut. Okay, he advised him forthwith. Like it was like a threat that he wanted Gandhi to leave that place immediately. All right. So he was not treated well. He was also denied of any information. Gandhi did not leave. Instead, he proceeded to Motihari, the capital of Champaran. Several lawyers accompanied him. At the railway station, a vast multitude greeted Gandhi. He went to a house, using it as headquarters, continued his investigations. A report came in that a peasant had been maltreated in a nearby village. Gandhi decided to go and see. The next morning, he started out on the back of an elephant. He had not proceeded far when the police superintendent's messenger overtook him and ordered him to return to town in his carriage. Gandhi complied. The messenger drove Gandhi home, where he served him with an official notice to quit Champaran immediately. Gandhi signed a receipt for the notice and wrote on it that he would disobey the order. Now, what happens is that even though Gandhi was being bullied by the commissioner and he was being asked to leave Trihut immediately, he did not. He instead went to Motihari, which was the capital of Champaran. A lot of lawyers accompanied him. They went along with him, and at the railway station, another vast multitude of people, a lot of people greeted Gandhi. Okay, a lot of people were there at the railway station to meet Gandhi. Now he went to a house and he used it as his headquarters where he could continue his investigations, where he could continue to read, to collect information, to collect the facts. Now, while he was there, a report came in. Somebody reported that a peasant, a farmer, had been maltreated. That means probably beaten or, of course, beaten. All right. So, in a nearby village. Now, Gandhi wanted to go and check on that person. He wanted to talk to that person. He wanted to ask what had happened. However, so he decided to go and see this person, okay, who was maltreated. Now, the next morning, he sat on on an elephant, okay. So he took an elephant, yes, grand, okay, and he tried to go to that village. However, he had not gone very far when the police superintendent over there of Motihari, okay, area, his messenger, he overtook him, he stopped him on the way. He had not gone very far, okay, elephants grand but slow, okay. So he overtook him and he stopped him and asked him to return with him to the town in his carriage. So this person was in his carriage. The messenger was in his carriage, and he asked Gandhi to get down from the elephant to stop. He stopped Gandhi. He asked him to get down from there, and he asked him to accompany him, to come with him. All right. He took him back to his place wherever he was staying, and drove Gandhi home. And of course, Gandhi went with him. All right. So he drove him to his place, and over there he served him a notice. He gave him a notice, official notice, which read that that Gandhi was to leave Champaran. He was to quit Champaran immediately. Okay. So there was an official notice now that he was being asked to leave immediately. Now Gandhi signed the receipt. he accepted that he signed that he had got that notice, he had received the notice, but he wrote on that that he is not going to obey that order. He is not going to leave Champaran. Okay, so he disobeyed the order. All right, so this is the very first, you can say, the first roots, the beginning of no civil non-disobedience. Okay, that's the first step. Now, in consequence, Gandhi received a summons to appear in the court the next day. All night, Gandhi remained awake. He telegraphed Rajendra Prasad to come from Bihar with influential friends. He sent instructions to the ashram. He wired a full report to the viceroy. Now, because he had disobeyed the order, there was a summons. Summons is an official order of the court which needs you to go and visit. Okay, so he's been called to the court and the next day, and so he does not sleep that night. He instead asks. He instead tries to uh, use his connections. All right. So he telegraphed Rajendra Prasad to come to Bihar with influential friends so that they could help him out. Now he also sent some instructions to the ashram, and he also sent the full report of whatever he was doing to the viceroy. All right. Now I want you all to write in the comments who was the viceroy at that time. This is what you're going to write down in the comments, who was the viceroy in around the year 1917. Okay. And I will pin the correct answers in the I will pin the correct comments. All right. Now, morning found the town of Motihari black with peasants. They did not know Gandhi's record in South Africa. They had merely heard that a Mahatma who wanted to help them was in trouble with the authorities. Their spontaneous demonstration in thousands around the courthouse was beginning of their liberation from fear of the British. Now, the next morning, when Gandhi was supposed to go to the court for the summons, the entire town of Motihari was filled with people. People had come to the streets to see. They did not know who Gandhi was or what he had done in South Africa. They were unaware of his presence and his influence there and whatever he had done there. But they had heard was that there was a Mahatma, there was a person there who had come to help them out, but who wanted to help them, but who had got into trouble with the authorities. He had done something to displease the authorities. So they came to support him in thousands. That was the first demonstration. They were all around the courthouse supporting Gandhi. Okay, and that was the very first step towards their freedom from fear of British, towards their liberation, towards their freedom from the fear, from uh, how because um, they were being bullied by the British. So this was the first step they took to show that their fear was now leaving. Fear of British was now leaving. The officials felt powerless without Gandhi's cooperation because they were thousands in number and they were all collected together. So the officials over there, they could not do anything to manage that crowd. So they had to take help of Gandhi to keep the crowd in control. He helped them regulate the crowd. He was polite and friendly. He was giving them concrete proof that their might, hitherto dreaded and unquestioned, could be challenged by Indians. Okay, so Gandhi helped the officials to keep the crowd under control. All right, and also in, at the same time, he was giving the message to those officials that if they wanted, it was a proof. He was giving them a proof that if they all got together, if Indians all got together, then their might, their power, that was at that time dreaded, that was at that time feared. He's talking about the British power. that if all Indians came together and to work in one direction, then the power of the power that the British held, the officials held, which was so far unquestioned, which was so far dreaded, which was so far something that all the people were scared of, that could be challenged by the Indians. That Indians could rise against the British. This was a concrete proof, the first proof for them. Is it clear? Now the government was baffled. The prosecutor requested the judge to postpone the trial. Apparently, the authorities wished to consult their superiors. Now the government was very shocked, very confused at as to why so many people had come in support of this one person who had recently come to Champaran. Okay. Now the prosecutor, the one who was representing the some this the person who was supporting the representing the government, he requested the judge to postpone the trial. All right. Now, because the authorities that had asked Gandhi to come, they had that had sent the summons through court to Gandhi, they now wish to consult their superiors. Now they were so confused as to what was happening that they wanted to ask their superiors what to do. So they wanted to delay this. They wanted to postpone the trial. Gandhi protested against the delay. Gandhi did not agree for the delay. He wanted to get the trial done there and then. So he read a statement pleading guilty. He agreed in the court that he was guilty, that he had done what he was being accused of. He was involved, he told the court, in a conflict of duties. So he said to the court that he had duties, and he was uh, you can say the reason he's giving to not to not leave Champaran and to disobey the order was because he was divided between duties. Okay, there was a conflict between duties and he had to choose one over the other. Which one? One on the one hand, not to set a bad example as a lawbreaker, on the other hand, to render the humanitarian and national service for which he had come. Now, what were the two duties? The first one was that he did not want to become a bad example for the people as a lawbreaker. All right. And second one was his duty that he had come to help the people, the humanitarian and national service that he had come to give to these people. Okay, the service that he had come to to these people, to give to these people, that was his second duty. Okay, so the first one is that he did not want to set a bad example as a lawbreaker. And the second one was that the reason why he had come to Champaran, which was humanitarian and national service. Okay, so now he was divided between the two. What he chose was he disregarded the order to leave, not for want of respect for lawful authority, but in obedience to the higher law of our being, the voice of conscience. He asked the penalty due. Okay. Now he says that out of these two duties, he chose this one. He chose his humanitarian and national service. His duty towards his people is what he chose. And therefore, he had to he had to disobey the authority and become a lawbreaker. He accepted his mistake in the court of law and gave the reason that he did not obey this law. He did not obey uh, the you can say the authorities asking him to leave immediately because he wanted to obey the higher law of being, that is the voice of his conscience, the voice of the inner voice that he had, because and the reason why he had come. Okay, so he simply accepted his mistake. He gave his reason. He told him about his conflict of duties, and this is a very important point. Okay, because this can come as MCQ also. That what was the conflict of duties that Gandhi faced, and this can also come as a 2 or 3 mark question, or maybe a bigger, you can say a higher mark question as a 4 marker question in exams. Okay, that what were the conflict of duties that Gandhi faced, and what he chose and why. Okay, or how did he resolve it? So that this can be a long answer question. So make sure that you understand this paragraph, this point very carefully. So the conflict of duties were that there were two duties that he was facing, that he had in front of him. One was to not become a bad example as a lawbreaker, and the second duty was that the reason that he had come for Champaran, which was the humanitarian and social and national service that he had come to give to the people. Now, how he resolved his conflict of duties was that he chose to stay. He chose to stay for the service, for the humanitarian and national service that he had come for, and hence had to disregard the law, and for which he accepted, he asked the penalty that was due. All right. He listened to his inner voice. I hope this is clear. If not, please ask in the comments and I will try to explain it in a shorter video again, maybe a specific video for conflict of duties. Okay? The magistrate announced that he would pronounce sentence after a 2-hour recess, and Gandhi and asked Gandhi to furnish bail for those 120 minutes. Gandhi refused. The judge released him without bail. Now, what happened was that the judge announced that they would now give the judgment after 2 hours. They wanted 2 hours as a recess, as a break. Okay. And they asked Gandhi to pay for the bail. Okay. I hope you know what bail is. When you go to jail and you want, um, when you're arrested, when a person is arrested and they are, um, to free them. And but it is an you can say an assurance that the person will be attending the summons of the law of the court. Okay, their trial in the court law in a law court that they will attend, that is bail. Okay, that they can be freed, but they are not. They are supposed to always come and attend their trial so long as it goes on. So Gandhi was asked to pay to leave for to stay free for 120 minutes to pay for there, but Gandhi refused. He said he did not pay anything. So the judge let him go without bail. The judge did not even ask for money after that. When the court reconvened, the judge said that he would not deliver the judgment for several days. Meanwhile, he allowed Gandhi to remain at liberty. Now, when the court came back, they uh, reconvened, they met after this 120 minutes of break. The judge said that he is not going to deliver any judgment that day. Okay. And for several days, because they probably wanted to discuss, they were baffled, they were maybe confused as to what to do because he had already pleaded guilty. So, what punishment to give and what amount of fee should they take from him? Probably they wanted to discuss all that. Okay, so the judge said that he will not deliver the he would not deliver the judgment at that time, and he would take some days. He would take several days. So in that time, in that duration, he said that Gandhi could be free. He remained at liberty. Rajendra Prasad, Brij Kishore Babu, Maulana Maulana Mazharul Haq, and several other prominent lawyers had arrived from Bihar. They conferred with Gandhi. What would they do if he was sentenced to a prison? Gandhi asked. Why? The senior lawyer replied. They had come to advise and help him. If he went to jail, there would be nobody to advise and they would go home. Now, uh, lawyers like Dr. Rajendra Prasad, Brij Kishore Babu, Maulana Mazharul Haq. Okay, so these people, and there were other very famous and very renowned lawyers that had come to Bihar because remember, Gandhiji had asked Dr. Rajendra Prasad to bring all the prominent people he knew, all the influential people he knew, lawyers he knew. Now they conferred with Gandhi, they talked, they discussed with Gandhi, and Gandhi asked that if he were sent to prison, if he were sentenced to prison, What would they do uh, behind him? What would they do had he to go to prison? Now, so there was a senior lawyer who replied to him that they had come to advise him, they had come to help him out. So if he went to jail, there would be nobody they had to advise, and they would all go back home. They would all go back where they had come from. All right. So, in a nutshell, the lawyers implied that if Gandhi were to go to jail, they would all go back. Nobody is going to help anybody else. Okay. What about the injustice to the sharecroppers? Gandhi demanded. The lawyers withdrew to consult. Rajendra Prasad has recorded the upshot of their consultations. They thought amongst themselves that Gandhi was totally a stranger, and yet he was prepared to go to prison for the sake of the peasants. If they, on the other hand, being not only residents of the adjoining districts, but also those who claimed to have served these peasants, should go home, it would be a shameful desertion. Okay, so now what happened is that um, when a senior lawyer replied that they would go back home if Gandhi were arrested. So now Gandhi cross-questioned as to what would happen to the what about the situation of the sharecroppers. What would they do? What would happen to them? They wouldn't help them. They would go back. So now, when he asked this question, these lawyers they went back. They consulted amongst themselves, and Dr. Rajendra Prasad has recorded this conversation of theirs, and he tells Louis Fischer that the discussion went like this: that they thought that if Gandhi, who was a total stranger, who was not even a part of that place, he was an outsider technically. Okay, he had come from a whole other state. Okay, and if he, being an outsider or being a total stranger to these people, he was willing to go to jail for them, he was willing to go to prison for them, then all those people, all those lawyers who were a part of that state, who were a part of those people and who had actually served those people at some point or the other, who had vowed to serve these people, if they left, that would be a shameful desertion. That would be leaving shamefully. Okay. So what happened is now that Gandhi uh, asked that if he were to go to prison, what would happen to the sharecroppers? And now these lawyers they talked amongst themselves. They discussed that if Gandhi, who barely knew these people, if he could go to prison for them, if he could sacrifice himself for them, then and if they left these peasants in at whatever situation they were and in their condition, that would be very shameful for those lawyers because they were part of that community, they were part of the very place, and they already knew, they had been a part of all this since very long. They were serving these people, they were helping these people, so they could not leave. Okay, they accordingly went back to Gandhi and told him they were ready to follow him into jail. The battle of Champaran is won, he exclaimed. Then he took a piece of paper and divided the group into pairs, and put down the order in which each pair was to court arrest. Okay, so they decided that they would not leave the place. They will follow. They would follow Gandhi. If Gandhi were arrested and he had to go to prison, they would go with him. Okay, so now this pleased Mahatma Gandhi very much, and there he finally realized, he finally exclaimed that now the battle of Champaran was won. Okay, now he got to work. He took a piece of paper, he divided the group, he divided the lawyers into pairs, and he put down the order in which each pair would get arrested if Gandhi got arrested. Okay. Several days later, Gandhi received a written communication from the magistrate informing him that Lieutenant Governor of the province had ordered the case be dropped. Civil disobedience had triumphed the first time in modern India. Now, what happened is that he was ready to go to prison. Mahatma Gandhi was ready to go to prison, and he had convinced other people also to come along with him because that would have helped him out. Okay, so now several days later, they were waiting for this the final judgment of the verdict of the court to come out, and several days later, through a written communication, through a letter from the magistrate, Gandhi received this. He got to know that the lieutenant governor of that province, the governor of that area, had ordered that the case be dropped. So, no trial, no judgment would be given for this case anymore. Okay, this was the very first time that civil disobedience had won in modern India. Okay, this was the very first time when somebody did not obey the law that the British had laid, and yet they were not being punished. They were not being given any punishment. Or, all right. So this was the very first victory of civil disobedience. Now Gandhi and the lawyers now proceeded to conduct a far-flung inquiry into the grievances of the farmers. Depositions by about 10,000 peasants were written down. Notes made on other evidence. Documents were collected. The whole area throbbed with the activity of the investigators and the vehement protests of the landlords. Okay. Now what happened? Because now this was the first victory that people saw with Gandhi. Okay, so what happens is that the lawyers that had stayed back and Gandhi, they now proceeded to conduct this inquiry. They continue this investigation that was ongoing for the sharecroppers and the injustice done to them. All right. So a lot of peasants came and they told about their grievances, they told about their issues, and they told about the whatever they knew about their lands and how and what was happening, okay, and what they were suffering from. So a lot of 10,000 depositions by about 10,000 peasants were written down. Whatever they told, all that was written down, and then notes were also made on a lot of other evidence. Okay, so a lot of evidence was being collected against the British, against the Tinkatia system and this sharecropping system. Okay, and also the injustice that was being done to the peasants. The whole area was very active with activity, with a lot of people were coming in, going around. This whole area was buzzing with activity, and people were talking amongst themselves, trying to get as much evidence as possible. And of course, and activity of the investigators also, these people, all the lawyers, they were questioning people, they were asking around, even the landlords they were asking. Okay, and this also resulted in the vehement protests of the landlords. In June, Gandhi was summoned to Sir Edward Gate, the Lieutenant Governor. Before he went, he met leading associates and again laid detailed plans for civil disobedience if he should not return. Gandhi had four protracted interviews with the Lieutenant Governor, who, as a result, appointed an official commission of inquiry into the Indigo sharecroppers' situation. The commission consisted of landlords, government officials, and Gandhi as the sole representative of the peasants. Now, what happens is that after while they were collecting and while the landlords were protesting, in June, Gandhi was called by Sir Edward Gate. Okay, he was a lieutenant governor over there, and he was called to meet him. Now, before he went, he met all the leading associates, all the lawyers, and again he told them what to do if he gets arrested or if he does not come back. Okay, so how to he gave them a detailed plan of civil disobedience. All right. Now, Gandhi had four very long interviews with the lieutenant governor, longer than he had ever expected or anybody had ever expected. Okay, so Gandhi had four such long interviews with the lieutenant governor, and who finally appointed an official commission of inquiry into this situation. Okay, so after a very long talk, after four very long talks with Gandhi, Lieutenant Governor finally agreed, he finally decided to appoint an official commission for inquiry to check what is the issue. Okay, and in that commission, who all were there? All the landlords were there, government officials were there, and then there was only Gandhi. He was the only representative of the peasants. Okay, so remember who all were the part of the commission? Landlords, government officials, and Gandhi was the only representative for all those peasants. Gandhi remained in Champaran for an initial uninterrupted period of 7 months, and then again for several shorter visits. The visit, undertaken casually on the entreaty of an unlettered peasant, in the expectation that it would last a few days, occupied almost a year of Gandhi's life. Okay, so now what happens is that Gandhi remained in Champaran to work on this issue. For first, he stayed there without going anywhere for 7 months. Then again, he kept coming back to Champaran for shorter visits. Okay, now this visit Gandhi had taken very casually first. At first, he had taken it very casually. He thought he'd go and just check and see what is going on and maybe help people or maybe assign people to do it. Okay, so he had taken this on the request, on the humble request of someone who was illiterate. Okay, someone who looked like who lacked in formal education. So he had taken it very casually that he would go in and for a few days he would stay there. But that humble request from such a person had actually taken almost a year of his life. Okay, he had to stay there for almost a year to get to the bottom of this issue and to solve it for good. The official inquiry assembled a crushing mountain of evidence against the big planters, and when they saw this they agreed in principle to make refunds to the peasants. But how much must we pay? They asked Gandhi. Now, because the official inquiry was there, it assembled, uh, uh, it was able to procure, it was able to assemble, it was able to collect a lot of evidence. Okay, pieces of evidence to against these big planters, against these big landlords. Okay, and now when they saw this, they had to agree in principle. They had by words. Okay, they were just agreeing for the sake of agreeing that they were ready to pay the compensation. Okay, they were ready to pay the refunds. And they asked Gandhi, how much should they pay? They were trying to, entangle him in their ways so that they could lead to a deadlock. Okay, so that they wouldn't have to pay. So they were trying to be very witty. But we had Gandhi. Okay, so they thought he would demand repayment in full of the money which they had illegally and deceitfully extorted from the sharecroppers. He asked only 50%. Okay, so they thought that because they asked Gandhi how much they had to pay, they should pay. They thought that he would ask for a full refund, and they would blatantly disagree to it. Okay, they would not agree to pay 100%. All right, and of the money which was actually illegally and very cunningly, very deceitfully, which was taken by force from these peasants. Okay, so they had not even earned this money through proper ways, through proper means. So it was all illegal money, and they thought that he would ask 100%, but Gandhi, he only asked 50%. There he seemed adamant. writes Reverend J.Z. Hodge, a British missionary in Champaran who observed the entire episode at close range, thinking probably that he would not give way. The representative of the planters offered to refund to the extent of 25%. And to his amazement, Gandhi took him at his word, thus breaking the deadlock. Okay, Gandhi asked for 50%, but of course, that 50% was also not being given to him. And this has been recorded by a person, a reverend called J.Z. Hodge. Okay, a reverend is person in church, okay, at a higher authority. Now, this reverend is observing, he was a British missionary, and he was observing this entire incident, okay, this entire episode at a close range, very closely he was observing, and he was thinking that he would not give way. He had asked for 50%, and and um he seemed very adamant, he seemed very stubborn, and that he would not uh, let this issue be resolved then. Okay, the representative of the planters offered to return to the extent of 25%. Now he had asked for 50, and they you can say they gave a counter offer of 25% only. And and he thought that Gandhi would not agree to this. And then they could capture him, they could entangle him in an endless deadlock. They would force him, and they wouldn't have to give any money at all. Okay, because he wouldn't agree, the representative of the planters wouldn't agree for 50%, Gandhi wouldn't agree for 25%, so it would be a deadlock. But to his amazement, to his shock, Gandhi took him at his word. Okay, he said, okay, you're giving me 25%, works, let's do it. And thus he broke the deadlock. He did not let this issue linger. Let's see why. Events justified Gandhi's position. Within a few years, the British planters abandoned their estates, which reverted to the peasants. Indigo sharecropping disappeared. Now, what happened is that even though they were asked to give 25%, they just left the place. Instead of giving money, they all abandoned their estates. They all left those lands, and those lands came in, they came back to all the tenants. They became the whole sole owners of the land. So it's not only uh, a lot of people must have thought that why only 25%, because they had given a lot of money. Okay, so what followed that decision actually justified his decision. Okay, that they did not even give 25%, they abandoned those lands, they left those lands and ran away. Okay, and those lands, they came back to the peasants. They now got the complete ownership of those of their lands, and they were free from this indigo sharecropping. They were not supposed to pay any rent, they were not supposed to pay any fine, and they were free from all this having to sow the indigo and to give it as rent. Okay, so now they could use their lands as they wanted. Gandhi never contented himself with large political or economic solutions. He saw the cultural and social backwardness in Champaran villages and wanted to do something about it immediately. He appealed for teachers. Mahadev Desai and Narhari Parekh. Okay, remember the names Mahadev Desai and Narhari Parekh. Two young men who had just joined Gandhi as disciples, and their wives volunteered for the work. Several more came from Bombay, Pune, and other distant parts of the land. Devdas, Gandhi's youngest son, arrived from the ashram, and so did Mrs. Gandhi. Primary schools were open in 6 villages. Kasturbai taught the ashram rules on personal cleanliness and community sanitation. Now that was not all. Just helping these peasants, helping these farmers get their lands and get justice was not all that Gandhi worked for. Okay, he worked further. He saw how backward Champaran was, how illiterate the people were, and that they actually needed more than just lands and just the justice. Okay, so after they got the justice, after they got the land, and after they were freed from this burden of indigo sharecropping, he finally decided to do more for these people. Okay, he finally decided to he appealed to a lot of teachers. He appealed to a lot of teachers to help him out, to help educate these people so that they do not get caught in this trap, or in a trap like this ever again. Okay, so two people, Mahadev Desai and Narhari Parekh, they were two young men with their wives. Okay, so they had joined Gandhi as disciples and they volunteered. They agreed to help him for education. Then there were a lot of other people who came from Bombay, from Pune, and other parts of the land to help Mahatma Gandhi in his resolve. Okay, to help the people get educated. Devdas, who was Gandhi's youngest son, he arrived from the ashram from Gandhi and along with his mother. Okay, so Mahatma Gandhi's wife Kasturbai also came along to help him out. Now, primary schools were initially opened in 6 villages over there, and Kasturbai taught the ashram rules on personal cleanliness and community sanitation. So, all she taught in those schools and over there in those ashrams, she taught rules on how to stay clean. She taught about personal cleanliness, and she taught about how to keep the community clean. Okay, so she educated them on cleanliness. Health conditions were miserable. Gandhi got a doctor to volunteer his service for 6 months. Three medicines were available: castor oil, quinine, and sulfur oil ointment. Anybody who showed a coated tongue was given a dose of castor oil. Anybody with malaria fever received quinine plus castor oil. Anybody with skin eruptions received ointment plus castor oil. Gandhi noticed the filthy state of women's clothes. He asked Kasturbai to talk to them about it. One woman took Kasturbai into her hut and said, "Look, there is no box or cupboard here for clothes. The sari I'm wearing is the only one I have." Okay, so now quinine is a drug that is made from the bark of South American tree, which was used in past to treat tropical disease, which is malaria. Okay, so three medicines were available at that time, which was castor oil, quinine, and sulfur oil, sulfur ointment. Okay, so whoever showed a coated tongue, that person was given a dose of castor oil. Anybody with malaria got castor oil plus quinine, and somebody who had skin eruptions, who had something like fode, okay, they got ointment plus castor oil. They got sulfur ointment plus castor oil. So these were the only basic medicines that were available at that time. And Gandhi saw that because the health conditions were very miserable, he asked a doctor to volunteer for 6 months. Gandhi also noticed that the women's state was very sad. The clothes they wore were very dirty, very filthy. Okay, so he requested his wife to talk to them, to ask them why, or to ask them the reason for this condition. So one woman took Kasturbai into her hut and she showed her hut. She showed her that there was no box, there was no cupboard over there, and which was because they did not have clothes. The sari that the woman was wearing was the only one she had, so she had to keep it on throughout. Okay, all the time. That is why their clothes were so dirty. During his long stay in Champaran, Gandhi kept a long distance watch on the ashram. He sent regular instructions by mail and asked for financial accounts. Once, he wrote to the residents that it was time to fill in the old latrine trenches and dig new ones, otherwise, old ones would begin to smell bad. The Champaran episode. Okay, first let's discuss this paragraph. Okay, now while he had to stay in Champaran, he also kept a connection to his ashram in Sevagram. Okay, where he kept a watch and he kept sending instructions as to what to do. He kept asking for financial accounts. He kept checking what was happening over there. So he did not abandon his place. Okay, he was connected to Sevagram, and while he was working in Champaran. Okay, and once he also told the residents to, empty the trench and to dig a new one, because otherwise it will start smelling bad, it will get filled. Okay, now the Champaran episode was a turning point in Gandhi's life. What I did, he explained, was a very ordinary thing. I declared that the British could not order me about in my own country. Okay, so now Louis Fischer tells us that this episode from Champaran, this incident from Champaran, that happened at Champaran, was a turning point in Gandhi's life. And to which Gandhi explains to him that what he did was not anything out of the ordinary. It was just ordinary. Okay, and he tells him that he declared that the British could not order him around, could not tell him what to do in his own country. They had no right, they had no power over him. Okay, so that was what he tells Louis Fisher about what he had done. But Champaran did not begin as an act of defiance. It grew out of an attempt to alleviate the distress of large number of poor peasants. This was the typical Gandhi pattern. His politics were intertwined with the practical day to day problems of the millions. His was not a loyalty to abstractions, it was loyalty to living human beings. Okay, so now Louis Fisher tells us that whatever he did in Champaran, this was not an act of defiance, it was not an open refusal. He did not openly disobey anything or any law or any person. It was only that he was trying to reduce the pain, to reduce the stress, the problems of a large number of those poor peasants. Okay, and this was how Louis Fisher tells us that this was how Gandhi worked. Okay, he did not focus on the abstractions, he did not focus on the quality of dealing with ideas. He instead dealt with the events. Okay, he did whatever he had to for the people, and not just for the sake of any publicity or just for the sake of doing something. Okay, so he did work on deep levels, is what he is telling us, that his politics was intertwined with practical. Okay, it was not just bare politics telling people that he would help. Okay, like we see in today's times a lot of things. However, he actually came through with his promises. He did not make any huge promises. He worked at the ground level. He worked with the people. He worked to help reduce their stress. Okay, so he worked. It was his loyalty to his people, to the living human beings that he worked for. In everything Gandhi did, moreover, he tried to mold a new free Indian who could stand on his feet and thus make India free. Okay, so whatever Gandhi did, did not do it just for the sake of doing things. Okay, he did it so that whatever he did, it would get ingrained in people. It would make them understand, and they could stand on their own feet. And if in such a situation arises again, they would just they would be able to stand on their own feet and fight for themselves. Okay, they were so he made them independent. He made them independent in actual terms, and that's how he planned, and that's how he was able to make India free. Early in the Champaran action, Charles Freer Andrews, the English pacifist who had become a devoted follower of Mahatma Gandhi, came to bid Gandhi farewell before going on a tour of duty to the Fiji Islands. Gandhi's loyal friends thought it would be a good idea for Andrews to stay in Champaran and help them. Andrews was willing if Gandhi agreed, but Gandhi was vehemently opposed. He said, "You think that in this unequal fight it would be helpful if we have an Englishman on our side. This shows the weakness of your heart. The cause is just, and you must rely upon yourselves to win the battle. You should not seek a prop in Mr. Andrews because he happens to be an Englishman. Okay, so here what happens is that there was this person, Charles Freer Andrews. He was an English pacifist, okay, a person who believed in peace, okay, and who did not engage in wars and all such things. So, and he had become a devoted follower of Gandhi. So he came to meet Gandhi to bid farewell because he was going on a tour of duty to the Fiji Islands. Okay, now seeing that Andrews, an English person, was a devotee of Gandhi, and thinking that he could help them out in that Champaran case, his friends, lawyer friends, asked him to ask Andrews to stay. Now, Andrews would have agreed had Gandhi asked him to. Okay, he was okay with that. But Gandhi was opposed. He very passionately, very forcefully declined their requests because he said that he understood that these people thought that because it was an unequal fight, okay, because Britishers already had all the power and these people did not. So they thought, so he said that he understood that they thought that if Andrews, an Englishman, stood by them, this could tip the scales in their favor a bit. Okay, this could help them out. But he told them very strictly that you're not supposed to use any English person, or we're not supposed to use Mr. Andrews in this case as a prop, as a help to keep their position, because this shows their weakness. This shows that they do not believe their own power. They do not believe in their own reason that they're fighting for, in their own cause that they are fighting for. Okay, so Gandhi very strictly told them that this is not going to happen, and they have to have faith because the cause that they were fighting for was very actual, and they had to believe in it, and they had to believe in themselves. He read our minds correctly, Rajendra Prasad comments, and we had no reply. Gandhi in this way taught us a lesson in self-reliance. Self-reliance, Indian independence, and help to sharecroppers were all bound together. Now, not only did in through this incident, through this story, we get to know that not only did Gandhi help the peasants get freedom from this, injustice, from this unjust, you can say, law that they had been forced upon, this agreement contract that they had been forced upon, that not only did he do that, he also um, helped people understand their own power, understand to be self reliant, and he also urged people and finally drove us to Indian independence. Okay, so all this was all bound together. All the lessons were bound together. All the victories were bound together. Okay, and Rajendra Prasad comments that Gandhi had very correctly understood what they wanted and why they wanted, and hence they had no response to when he said that he was not going to use Mr. Andrews to help him win the case, because he believed in himself, he believed in the cause, he believed in the people, and he knew that the cause was real, it was actual, and that is how he taught them self reliance. Okay, so yes, a very long chapter, a part of history, but very interesting and very informative. It gives us knowledge, it gives us teachings about so many things, and it also tells us about how uh, the points of view of Mahatma Gandhi and how he led us to freedom. Okay, so I hope you have understood this chapter. If you have any questions, feel free to ask in the comments. And in the next few slides, we are now going to discuss the literary aspects of this chapter, which are very important because in exams, we are generally asked about the tone, style, more, way of writing, and themes are very important. So stick through the end because a little but very important part of the chapter is left. Okay, so let us now discuss the literary devices and other literary aspects. First, let us take a quick recap before that. Okay, so the story recounts Gandhiji's first civil disobedience movement in India, Champaran Satyagraha. Okay, a sharecropper named Rajkumar Shukla persistently requests Gandhiji to visit Champaran. British landlords forced peasants to grow indigo on 15% of their land under exploitative terms. Gandhiji investigates the injustice, faces legal opposition but refuses to leave Champaran, thus standing by the people he barely knew. Thousands support him. Eventually, British authorities yield to his civil resistance. Landlords refund money and the practice is abolished, showing the power of non violent protests. Okay, so this is our entire incident. You can use these to make notes, and I would recommend that you make notes on your own because it is very important. And in our upcoming videos, I am going to upload a video on how to make notes properly. Okay, so stay tuned to the channel and go through this chapter and make your own notes, make your own mind maps. It's going to be very helpful for you. Now, for the themes, the first we have is social and political injustice. We saw how the peasants were being maltreated and they were uh, forced to follow unjust rules and all the injustice that was happening. Okay. Then, the power of non violent protest, which is Satyagraha. We saw how very peacefully, very calmly Mahatma Gandhi handled the situation and he helped the peasants come out of their miseries. Empowerment through education and awareness. We saw how once this issue of peasants was solved and they got their fair share of land and money. Now we see that Gandhi did not only stop at that, he empowered the people through education, through making them aware so that they do not fall trap to such uh, laws and such circumstances ever again, so that they can stand on their own feet and they can work for themselves and their betterment. Leadership and moral courage. Okay, we saw how under Gandhiji's leadership all the issue was resolved without any violence, and how he morally encouraged people. His courage gave courage to people to stand for each other, for themselves, and for him, and for their cause, of course. We also saw colonial exploitation throughout this incident. We can see how the British was trying to bully and suppress Indians, yet we stood for our rights and we got them. And finally, self reliance and social upliftment. Uh, Towards the end, we see how Gandhi gives the message of self reliance by denying to use Mr. Andrews as a prop and by working hard to uplift this society. So, these were all the themes that we have covered in our chapter. Now, let's discuss the tone first. It is very inspiring, analytical, and respectful. Okay, there are tones there, inspiring, analytical, because Louis Fischer is and other people have analyzed the situation and given their comments. We saw Rajendra Prasad's comment. We saw um uh what was the guy's name? I'm sorry, it's left off my mind. The Reverend J.Z. Hughes. Okay, so we saw there were analysis going on, and the tone is very respectful. It is balanced with narrative detachment and moral admiration for Gandhi. Then the mood of it begins with helplessness when Rajkumar Shukla first meets Gandhi and he pleads him to come to Champaran, and for at first Gandhi refuses being because he's very busy, and then the mood of this story shifts of this chapter shifts to hope and then ends in triumph and empowerment. So we have four moods here. Okay, helplessness to hope to triumph and to empowerment. Style, it is journalistic and narrative nonfiction. use of first person reporting, real dialogues, and chronological storytelling, blends biography with historical insight. Okay, so this is the style that Louis Fischer has employed in writing story, this biography, as well as the chapter. It is journalistic and it uses first person. It reports the events. It also uses real dialogues, and the story goes in a chronological order, in a proper time, uh, as time goes. Okay, then this style of narration of writing, it blends biography with historical insight because it is written about a historical event. So it is biography of Gandhi with historical insight. Now, literary devices. First one is anecdote. Okay, it is the story of Rajkumar Shukla who persuades Gandhi. Then irony, the British expecting Gandhi to flee. Instead, he stays and resists, and the British flee. The landowners, they flee, they leave their lands. Okay, so that's the irony there. Symbolism, indigo as a symbol of colonial oppression. This is very important. Okay, indigo is as a symbol throughout this chapter, a symbol of colonial oppression. How the peasants were suppressed by the Britishers. And then contrast between Gandhiji's humility and the arrogance of British officials. It was very clear throughout the chapter. And finally, direct speech. This is also a literary device. This gives authenticity and a human voice to events. Okay, there are a lot of comments that have been put in the chapter. So that tells us that this incident is a reality. Okay, and it gives us a human connection. So these were all the literary devices. Now, finally, main characters. First, we have, of course, Mahatma Gandhi. He's the leader of our independence movement and our Champaran Satyagraha, and you know him very well. Then Rajkumar Shukla, the entire story starts from this person. Okay, he is a determined peasant who brings Gandhi to Champaran. Okay, then we have peasant farmers who are poor, oppressed, victims of colonial exploitation. And finally, the British landlords who are the oppressive figures who enforce indigo farming. Okay, so main characters are Mahatma Gandhi, Rajkumar Shukla, peasant farmers, and British landlords. And oh, yes, finally, we have the local lawyers and officials, okay, who first were reluctant because when Gandhi asked if he were to go to prison, what would they do after him? And they all said, and one of the senior ones, he said that they would leave, they would go back home because there would be nothing left to do. So they were reluctant at first to do anything, and then they became huge supporters of Gandhi's work. Finally, we have come to the end of this chapter. Let us quickly check the message and the morals that are being given. First is that non-violence is a powerful tool for justice. Okay, we do not need violence to to get justice. Then education and courage empower the masses. Real change begins when people challenge injustice. And finally, Gandhi's Champaran experience laid the foundation for India's freedom movement. So, all these messages are very important from the story, and we get to know from this chapter that we should inculcate all these in our lives. And that's how Gandhi turned indigo blue into a flag of resistance. If the story moved you, imagine what the rest of English can teach us. For daily English power ups, MCQ quizzes, summaries, and revision nuggets tailored for class 9 to 12th and PGT English aspirants. Join our WhatsApp channels today. The links are in the description. Let's make every chapter count together with the eloquent explorers. Until next time, stay curious, stay courageous.